This week in a conversation, I have the privilege to welcome author Guarria. He's joining me from Port Orange, a town just south of Daytona Beach, Florida. We're going to be talking about his fantastic book titled Proposition 13, The Second Tax Revolt. But before we get into this interesting video, I just want to remind everyone that it's crucial, very important to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it's going to be directly in your portable. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening with a very impressive author. His name is Charles Guarria. He's joining me from Central Florida. And we're going to be talking about his book, Proposition 13, The Second Tax Revolt. But before we get into Prop 13, Chuck, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, Chuck, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Chuck Guarria?
Well, I am a former librarian. That's how I started really my writing career. That was I started as a librarian back in 1998
Okay.
for Lehman Brothers on Wall Street in Manhattan, and went from there to Long Island University, the Brooklyn campus of Long Island University. And I was a library faculty there, and that's where the writing career started. On the personal side, as you mentioned, I'm living in Florida. I'm in 10 minutes from Daytona Beach in an area called Port Orange. I live with my girlfriend. We've been together for a total of 13 years. I love to write, and that's also part of my daily activity.
And since you mentioned your girlfriend, I'm pretty sure you're left alone when the writing time comes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You have to have that support.
I worked from home before the virus came and the pandemic came, so I was ahead of the curve on that, doing that for quite a while, for about 6 months before that, actually, before everybody else was working from home. And so I do have a lot of alone time here. I'm in my office right now.
Okay, so let's dive into Prop 13. Because you say that, the second tax revolt. Could you please educate our audience just a little bit?
Sure. So the subtitle is America's Second Great Tax Revolt. And the first, of course, is the revolution. What had happened was, so this all started in California. If you see the cover of my book, which I happen to have right here, the cover of my book, there's California. And what had happened in California, just the average person can get a law passed. So like if you and I wanted to pass a law on cutting taxes, we just need to get enough signatures to get the bill on the ballot. So that's what these two guys did, right? They said, hey, property taxes are out of control. Let's get a proposition on the bill. It was called Proposition 13.
Right.
And that bill will, if everybody passes it, if everybody votes yes for it, we're going to cut property taxes by 57%. So everybody was in California, right? So this is the next revolution. That's what they mean by the next revolution, the next great tax revolution.
Right.
Once again, America was rebelling about their taxes. And what had happened was other people in other states who have this ability, there's about 17 to 20 states that could also do what they can do in California, just get something on the ballot. They're like, hey, great idea. So it started going from California all the way across the country, and really lit the fuse. Economists and historians will say that it lit the fuse on the conservative revolution in America, because that swept up Ronald Reagan, who was the governor shortly before this happened. He wasn't the governor while it happened, but he was the governor shortly in California shortly before it happened. And that led to the Republicans until about, so this became law in 1976, and until about late 1990s, there was a conservative movement in this country that was pretty big, and a lot of it gets back to Proposition 13 and that movement in California to start cutting taxes.
And if I understand that, you say that this law still are in force in California, but at the beginning, it must have had some tremendous impact on government spending.
Absolutely, and that's where it came into play with the library. So when I was a librarian at Long Island University, I was required to write, publish or perish, right? I was required to write. And I noticed in my research how California constantly had this problem funding their library. So I backtracked it all the way to this proposition. So yes, you're 100% correct. What had happened was you cut the property taxes, governments don't have as much money. If governments don't have as much money, they're gonna cut services. You can't cut fire and you can't cut police. So what can you cut?
The library.
You can cut the library. You can cut not cleaning a park as much. You can let the grass grow a little bit higher and maybe not, get the litter out of there as much. So libraries have suffered a lot. So what this book really is about, more than anything else, this book is a case management study of what you as a librarian have to do if you're managing a budget under difficult fiscal circumstances. And it is, you are correct, still a law today. Just last 2 Novembers ago, they voted on part of it that affected commercial, not residential real estate. So yeah, it's still in force today.
Let me ask a question. We know that California is one of the most important states in the union. One of the richest ones too, in terms of contributing to the federal government. It has an economy that can pretty much, according to statistics, equal to most of the world's biggest economies. So is it fair to say that over time, Chuck, California has managed to at least deal with this? Because at the beginning, it cut property taxes by 57%. That was a major blow now to government, means of really government funding in a sense. So how did California manage to maintain, its economy? Because, at least a truly functioning government after such a major blow.
Yes. Well, I focused a lot more on the libraries themselves than what the overall economy was out in California. But, to your point, they've survived very well because I think they're like the 5th or 6th greatest economy in the world. If you consider them a country.
How did the library, or at least the library system, manage to survive after such a major blow?
Well, immediately after, it was pretty morose. People were pretty down, and they didn't know really how they were going to handle it. There were grassroots efforts to fund libraries. There were, on the school side, we can't forget school libraries. I'm talking elementary school. Parents were asked to do more. There were like Vegas nights to raise money for the school library. The libraries themselves, as I mentioned, simply did cut services. They would not open new buildings. They would not buy as many books. They would not hire people. It was basically, anyway, I want to say it was the Oakland library system had like 5 or 6 different budgets leading into Proposition 13 based on how much their budget would be cut. So there was all this pre-planning going on. But there was also a lot of doom and gloom beforehand, a lot of doomsayers about what was going to happen. Libraries basically didn't fully close unless they were super small in some small towns. But essentially, libraries they just managed with less. And that's the big lesson that you can learn in here.
Beautiful. I like the way you describe it. Very good. I know also you say you're a writer. You've written human interest stories. But we all know that every story or every writer writes based on human interest. Could be different genre, different subjects. But could you please tell us specifically, what do you mean by human interest?
The first one that comes to mind is it's more so I freelance for a local newspaper here called Hometown Newsvolusia, and we're like a hyper local paper, and we'll focus on people who are doing things within their community, whether it's a 501c or some people who start a farm in their backyard. I focus on these two women who their entire backyard is all crops. They just decided to do this. And then they sell like farm to table to businesses in the local area, microgreens. The organization, there's a dog rescue organization, and I've written about how they got started and donations to that group. So it's kind of that hyper local, here's what's happening in your community, here's what your neighbor is doing type thing. Those are the human interest stories.
So you're saying your career as a freelance writer, also you seem to have played some roles in journalism, because you said you interview police officers, politicians. How did you, was that the work that you do for the local newspapers down in the Daytona area, Volusia County?
Yes, it is. So, for instance, we had a Daytona Beach Shores police chief got a promotion to a statewide organization. I went to their station. I went to the police station in Daytona Beach Shores. Spoke to that gentleman for a little bit. I got his background, his life story. The politicians is a pretty consistent thing. Of the city councils, city managers, mayors. Sit down with them, speak with them, go to their meetings. I am going to do basically an outlook for 2022 on all the county seats that are open and who these people are and where their stance is. I am reaching out to them a little bit later on tonight to get quotes and things of that nature. So when it comes to the politicians and the police, it's essentially that sort of an angle. Promotions, what's new in town, what's the new townhouse that might be going up, development that's going up, what's the new park that's being built. It's that sort of information.
I know you currently working in another book. I think this one is a novel, right, that you're working on? And you say it's being better read right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you give us a sneak peek? I know writers don't like to do that. Let's just give the viewers of CSMS Magazine of the conversation a little sneak preview of what the story is all about.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for asking. So the book is about a musician, a rock star, and he's from Puerto Rico. He comes of age in 1971, and it's really an American life story. It involves more than just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, although that's definitely in there. But there's more to it than that. There's a little bit of American history in there. It's not the glorification of drugs, by the way.
No, I understand.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's about relationships. It's about because he has a family. It's about his family. It's about relationships. It's about things that have happened in this country. He has a career like anybody's music career, whether you think of Aerosmith or you think of Kiss. That's been up and down. So his is too. That's not giving away the plot line. Nobody's career is on a trajectory all the way up.
Exactly.
But essentially, that's what it is. He's the America or American might be in the title. Okay. I have an idea for that because he is it's very much an American life story seen through his eyes.
Okay. And also, I'm very impressed. You are a 3-time winner of Emerald Group Publishing High Commended Award. 3 times. So that's really interesting. So how is it for you, to carry this new resume? How do you feel?
Oh, well, I love it. It was really great and an honor to receive it. It comes from my library days. before I wrote the book as a librarian, I had written a few journal articles, and the award is for having one of the best articles of that year in the journal.
Wow.
So that's where that award comes from. And yes, I'm very proud to have it. It's great.
Very good. Now, Chuck, at some point in the conversation, we always stop talking about literature for a bit. We switch to something cozy. I know you've done in Daytona, and Daytona is reputed for its seafood restaurants, So I know you live with your girlfriend now. Is that part of the cuisine? And since you're Italian American, can we find some Italian also if I go visit you down there?
Oh, yes, definitely. Maybe I should write a book about where to eat.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Seafood, the Chart House, which is a short walk from a great area called Beach Street. I don't know if you've been to Beach Street, but the Chart House is fantastic. There's a place that's been around for 50 or 60 years on the Italian side called Mario's, in an area called, it's right on the border of like Holly Hill and I think Daytona, or maybe Holly Hill and Ormond Beach. It's called Mario's. Yeah, fantastic Italian place. I'd highly recommend that. Some more like American cuisine, Stonewood. Oh, you know what? We have a great place that if you're a fan of history at all, President Warren Harding, had a beach house in Daytona that is now an Italian restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, and it's called The Cellar.
So you have to drive down the International Speedway to get there, or?
Yes, I think it's on ISB, it's one of those things where I know how to get there, but I think it's on ISB heading towards the beach. It's called The Cellar, so if anybody wants to Google it, and you actually eat in the cellar of his beach house, and it's a beautiful place with fantastic food. Yeah, that's a highly recommended one. Yes, definitely.
All right. So now, if I were to ask you this question, Chuck, because I know writers also read a lot, and since you were a librarian at some point, so you must have read a lot of books. So, who you would consider as your favorite author? It doesn't have to be an Italian American.
Well, this is a really great question because I tend to read books to inform my writing. Correct. It's not a particular author, it's like a genre. So since I've been writing about a rock star, I've been reading a lot of biographies, be it Paul Simon or Joe Perry, Tina Turner. There's some very strong women in my book, by the way, who are in the rock business. So I wanted to read about Tina Turner, Janis Joplin, Lita Ford. So it's more like biographies that I've been reading over the last, I'll say 3 years, than any particular author, because I need to know. And like Joe Perry, like that, when I was reading his book, I was like, I really need to write about that. So I'm not gonna say what it is, you gotta read the book. But I was like, great, I can't believe I missed that. And then I read to inform my writing. I'm reading Faulkner right now, because he had a style that was kind of similar to mine, The Sound of Fury. And that's kind of similar to, he had like a lot of narrations and sometimes you don't know who's speaking. And my book's kind of a little experimental like that. So I wanted to see how he did it. And I recently picked up a book that's in poem form because I had an idea of putting my book in poem form, which I'm going to ditch. But I bought that book to read it, to see how that author wrote in poem form. So it's more what can inform my writing. I also read a lot of news. This came in handy since I ended up writing for a newspaper. I read a lot of newspapers in my life when I used to commute to Manhattan from Long Island. Right. Before the web and smartphones, I'd have the newspaper and just read it from cover to cover. So I used to do that as well. But I don't really, honestly, I don't wait, with bated breath for a particular author. It's what can help me in my writing. That's an important thing.
All right. So this new novel, what kind of genre is that? Is it historical fiction or?
Experimental fiction. Really, I have some kind of unique things in there. There's multiple narrations. The way I formatted the book, it's a light beach read. I feel I've had some feedback from beta readers who wish, like, because obviously it's a happy book, but obviously everybody's life has some trauma.
Of course,
and some, yes, and some people have said that they wish that those scenes were a little bit more deep and a little bit more like serious, but it's a light beach read. So it's a kind of book that I think that would be great when you don't want to have your emotions dragged through the coals, because that wasn't the point of it. I mean, I didn't start out that way. The characters just kind of went that way.
Right.
So it's not gonna make you cry, but it's basically, I would say, to wrap that up, like a beach read, experimental, and overall just a fun book.
One author told me at some point in the story, sometimes her characters literally drive her to a certain place. Yes. Where she didn't expect to be.
Right.
Is that what happened to you when you started writing it?
Some scenes, yes, definitely. Well, one particular character, yes, I had one particular character. In my mind, the character was going to be a lot more kooky than he turned out to be, if that makes sense. And I had no idea, and he actually became a lot more likable than I thought he was going to be. Like, he's not the main character. The main character is, by the way, is named Orlando. So my rock star is named Orlando Roque de Coyatzo, and he's born in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. And somebody in his life turned out, who I thought was going to be a little bit nutty, turned out to be more like just a little less kooky than I thought, and fun. So yeah, that happens. But scenes, to your point, there are certain scenes that, like, you think in your mind are going to go one way, and the characters just take them another. That's definitely happened.
The other way.
For sure. Like, you don't know. I'm not an outliner. I don't know how you write, but I'm not an outliner. I just kind of sit down and write.
No. You're not alone on this one. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So
no. We all the same.
Right.
Let me ask you a question, because I know now you must have some preference when it comes to music at this point. Can I guess it's the rock and roll type of thing?
Yes. Well, my all-time favorite is heavy metal. My all-time favorite band is Kiss, and there's a band called Angel that I absolutely love. But I listened to everything going back to like the early 1900s, and Big Mama Thornton, through Billie Holiday and Elvis and Chuck Berry, right up, through the Stones, and right up to bands like today, some really popular bands like The Struts, a band called Wild Street, just like anything. Some of them are a little bit off the beaten path, which is phenomenal, a little less commercial. Okay. But yeah, I have a wide blues. I absolutely love the blues. But if I had to have one, type of music with me on an island somewhere, it would be heavy metal.
So when do we expect to see this second now? When do you have like a time frame for the release?
Yes, I expect to get the beta readers will be done in about 2.5 weeks. Make some revisions based on that. I've already actually started that, and I expect if I self-publish, because I'm not sure which way I'm going with that. So if it's up to me, self-determination, it'll be out next year. If I'm with a publisher, obviously it's kind of in their hands, and if they want to delay it until the year after, then I just have to live with it. But if it's up to me, I fully expect it'll be out next year. Okay,
great. So, we could talk forever. I like talking to you. Yeah.
I love talking to you, yeah.
So, Chuck, last question. Is there a lesson that you would want to leave our audience when it comes to managing budgets, especially for the public good, like libraries, for instance?
Yes. It's really planning ahead. These folks knew what was coming down the pike, and so don't be so narrow focused that you don't know what's going on around you. Like, you need to know what your government's up to, so you can plan ahead and know what kind of budget you're going to have. So always have an emergency plan, something to fall back on.
Okay. So with that, Chuck, I'm just going to say it's been such a pleasure, more than a pleasure, to have you this evening.
Thanks.
And the conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.